Sony. Weird, wonderful Sony. Sony's always been a company that's done its own thing. They don't follow other companies into trends just because they exist. They've often come up with things that are uniquely Sony, and sometimes they're weird, sometimes they're wonderful. I have a feeling today we're going to see a bit of both, because today we're talking about the Sony Xperia 10 Mark III. We're not going to talk about their naming convention. Every YouTuber has covered that already. We'll move on from there. I believe this phone is the most important device they have today in their Xperia range because it is priced under $500. And in that price point, there's so much competition that it's going to make it significantly hard for them to differentiate their product. Or so I thought. Let's talk about it, right? Okay, actually, let's take a little trip. You and I were walking down to the mall, right? It's a nice mall. It's our favorite mall. We're going to our tech store, the best tech store in all the land. It has all the devices you could possibly want at all the price points you could possibly want, right? And we go over to the section marked smartphones under $500. And we see a positive plethora of options in front of us. Like, it's insane the amount of choice one has. This sea of plastic that is full of colors and brightness and shiny things that are shouting on top of each other just to get you to try one of them. And in the middle of all that, you see this one device that seems to be a little slimmer, a little taller. Not at all plastic. In fact, it looks like it's made of glass all around. On the back of the device is this camera array that doesn't try to remind you of the Borg from Star Trek or that weird octopus thing from the Matrix. No, it's just one simple slit, 3 lenses, that's it. And on a relatively plain back, all you have is the word Sony. That's it. Okay, there's a little NFC logo on top as well, but you get the point. I don't know about you, but if I see all of this plastic and all of this shoutiness, and in the middle you see a statement of quiet elegance, I'm going to gravitate towards that and at least give it a shot. I'm at least going to pick it up and see what it's all about. So let's do that. So we pick up this device, right? And we see that it's got a 21:9 aspect ratio, which means it fits in the hand rather well. It's a narrow device. And we check the spec sheet and we find out that it's Gorilla Glass 6 on both sides. And it's got an IP68 water and dust resistance rating. Not things that you usually find in this price category. Now you're intrigued a little more. You look around the device, you see that the fingerprint sensor is on the right, very handy. And there's a little slot on the left for a micro SD card, which doesn't require a SIM removal tool. You don't need that little pin. You just sort of pop it out and put in a micro SD card and expand your storage. It's not the sort of thing they advertise, but it's the sort of attention to detail that some companies have that make your experience that little bit nicer. Not a huge deal, but nice to have. You start up the device and you're greeted by this beautiful 1080p OLED panel. 60Hz refresh rate only, but that's fine. 120Hz touch sampling rate to give you that smooth UI experience and that slightly nicer, more responsive gaming experience. 1080p on a 6-inch display, I would contest, is plenty of pixels, and what you get is a little bit of battery saving in the mix, which I'm always for. The user interface itself seems to be pretty much stock Android with a little bit of Sony magic mixed into it. For example, you've got that dual app multitasking and dual app task switching, which is a very nice little touch, especially on a widescreen device like this. You've also got that floating little button that you can tap and access your favorite apps. Also a nice little touch. But apart from these little things, there isn't much that they've changed to the UI, and this is a good thing because it keeps everything minimal and clutter-free. All of this is looking good right now, right up to the point where you open the app drawer. And that's where things start to crumble a little bit, because you see that it's filled with apps that you had never asked for. So the device actually comes pre-installed with Facebook, Amazon Prime Video, Netflix, Call of Duty Mobile, LinkedIn, and so on. And this is a little bit of a disappointment, especially since you can't uninstall them. You can disable them, but you can't uninstall them. I don't know what you call this, but I call this bloatware. Now we can convince ourselves that we use these apps anyway, but the fact that you can't uninstall them means they're going to take up a little bit of your storage, and they're going to probably have some background processes running, at least in some cases, which means it takes up a little bit of your processing power as well. Nonetheless, they don't have any ads anywhere in the operating system, and it pains me to say that this is a feature in 2021, but the fact is, companies like Xiaomi and BBK have made it so that ads in the operating system seem like the norm at this price point, which is very disappointing. Thankfully, Sony hasn't stooped quite that low. The next thing you do is you want to see what the screen's really made of, so you fire up your favorite YouTube video from What's News. subscribe by the way, and you listen to it, you realize it's got a mono speaker that's not that great, but you notice that on top there's a headphone jack. Not only does it have a headphone jack, it also has high-res audio capability so that you get better quality audio both wired and wirelessly, because it's got that LDAC support. So if you have a Sony wireless headset that supports LDAC, you can transmit high-resolution audio over Bluetooth. So you've got a lovely screen and lovely audio to go with it. So far, so good. Next thing you do, as everyone does, is you open up the camera app. Now here's where things start falling apart a little bit. See, Sony so far has not catered to you and me, not the tech enthusiast. They've catered to the average consumer. But the camera is super important, and this is where Sony has some expertise, except for the fact that their expertise is dependent on large cameras with large sensors, like the one I'm using right now to record this video. But when it comes to tiny sensors like that of a cell phone, you need a lot of software processing to make the image look good, and this is something that only Google, Apple and Samsung really do well. Like some other companies have gotten better at it. Sony in fact has gotten significantly better than their previous phones at it, but still it's not quite there. As long as there's good light, the photos and videos will come out fine, but don't expect an amazing camera quality. But hey, under $500, all they have to do is be better than the competition, and there's a very good chance they're going to be better than the Xiaomi's and the Realme's of the world, provided you remember these two things. When Sony does photo and video, they're going to try and give you the most accurate reproduction of the world. What this means is you're not likely to get oversaturated and punchy colors. You're likely to get more natural colors. And you're also not likely to get that artificially smoothed out image. Again, it's going to be as natural as possible. Whether you like that or not, that's up to you. Generally speaking, it's going to be a reasonably capable camera for this price range. You're also going to get a lot of manual control. So if you want to mess around a bit, Sony's probably the one you want to go for. Just that in auto mode, it will not be as good as a Pixel4A, which competes in this price point. Now, all of this hardware is powered by a Snapdragon 690, and this is another huge chink in its armor, right? The Snapdragon 690, again, as tech enthusiasts, you and I are both thinking this is way too old. That is just not good enough for 2021. And you're right. But here's the thing. You and I are a very, very small part of the population, and Sony knows this. Chances are, more than likely, if you are an average user who doesn't use apps that take up a lot of resources and doesn't use these apps for a long period of time, you'll never notice it, because a Snapdragon 690 will still run all your everyday apps just fine. So I would argue that for a lot of people, this doesn't really make a difference. And finally, all of this is run on a 4500 milliampere battery. The battery life is supposed to be very, very good, and it also supports 30-watt charging. But puzzlingly, the charger that comes in the box, yes, you get a charger in the box, is only 7.5 watt. This again leaves me with a little bit of disingenuity, because Sony's made it seem like they haven't followed the trend, right? Apple's done away with the charger, Samsung's done away with the charger, Sony still gives you a charger. But really, when you look closely, it looks more like they just had a bunch of old 7.5 watt chargers lying around from 4 years back, and they just threw that into the box. Because why wouldn't they just give you the 30-watt charger? It is sold separately, just not with the box. Nonetheless, at the end of the day, is the device worth it, and is it for you? Weirdly, the answer might be yes, very much so. Because hear me out, okay? As long as you're not a tech enthusiast, as long as you're not someone who cares only about pure performance, as long as you don't run very heavy apps for a long time, you're not going to feel the performance drop. It's going to run everything pretty much decently. Not phenomenally, but pretty much decently. But around that level of performance, you get a package that has some stately elegance. It's designed beautifully and with great class. You've got a great display panel mated with excellent high-res audio, both wired and wireless. A camera that's going to be reasonably capable, and all of that run by a 4500 milliampere battery, which should take you through the day. And if you do spring for that extra 30-watt charger, you'll have a better experience overall. I know there are a couple of devices that come close to competing with this. The Pixel4A, for example, is going to give you better video and photo results any day of the week. Like, they are just very, very good at it. The Samsung Galaxy A52 gives this phone a solid run for its money, but it's not built quite as nicely. To my eyes at least, the Samsung doesn't have the same class and panache as the Sony has, and it certainly doesn't have any emphasis on high-res audio if that's important to you. For a certain kind of user for whom pure performance is not really that much of an issue, I would go out on a limb and say that you will be very hard-pressed to find any cell phone under $500 that will compete with the Sony Xperia 10 III as a complete package. Nothing else quite comes close to the level of class, the fit and finish of this product, in my opinion, more so than any Xperia before it. And that is why the Sony Xperia 10 Mark III is probably Sony's most important smartphone to date. It's been an absolute pleasure. You've been watching What's News. Stay happy, stay peaceful, stay colorful.